energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hey, good people. This is Andrea Dragonfly, your host of the show Connected, where we talk about how everything going on in our lives is connected. So, we are riding the coattails of the presidential election last week. And so, I talked last week about how divine powers are at play, and that all powers, all of these energies, as I've been kind of talking about, we have the helpful energies, the benevolent energies, and we also have the unhelpful energies or the malevolent energies. And that these energies are definitely unseen energies. We can't see them for the most part. Sometimes we might see a ghost, which is, showing up as, an apparition of some sort. But for the most part, we don't really see these energies playing out. So, looking at the presidential election, and just a little recap, as I always do every show, we're looking at how that really big powers are at play, and that we're headed into really extraordinary change, shifts and changes. And that 2025 is going to look very different than what the last several years, decades of our lives have kind of sort of known. We kind of get very comfortable and everybody's just doing their thing. We're not paying attention, and life is just kind of carrying us forward. And no matter what, especially in the political arena, which I usually stay out of when I talk about these types of things on the show, but it's also, I'm only talking about it a few shows just to bring forward the energy, because everything again is about energy. So when we were talking a few shows ago, I was talking about how we have these greater demons, and we have the mid-sized demons and the lesser demons. And so these greater demons are also the ones that are working on institutions. They're working in large scale government. They're working with large millions of people or large numbers of people. They can also be working in organizations that also impact large numbers of people, right? So I was even talking about the International Monetary Fund. I was talking about the World Health Organization, and we're looking at Christianity and the Roman Catholics. Like there is some energies that, and by all means, if I don't want to offend anybody, but wherever there's light, there's going to be an attraction for darkness. And darkness has a goal. And the goal is more along the lines of sort of like kind of destruction, change, breaking it down. Excuse me. I've been having a little bit of issue with my throat, so please excuse me if I'm kind of coughing at all. And then also, the benevolent beings are about creation, building it up. And we have these two opposing forces. We have that light force that really is striving for, again, and I've been saying this many shows, and I will say things that are really important multiple times, right? Because we want to really get it in our energy fields, is that we are about, the light is about bringing us to free will, to personal freedom, to our choices. And we're going to be presented with so many different opportunities to choose. And they really are wanting us to grow. And even if we make those choices that end up hurting us in some way, the wrong choice, there's never a wrong choice. It's always an opportunity, right? And so that choice might have set you back a little bit, but there's a lesson there. So the benevolent energies are there to help us learn those lessons so that we make different choices, because ultimately we are aligned with what is good and spiritually or consciously just in the world, in the cosmos. And so we're striving for what makes us feel good. That doesn't take away, somebody else's natural, individual right as a human being, right? So we don't want to impede on other people's personal choices and sovereignty for themselves to feed our own. And so that's why we have these allies that are helping grow us. They're helping us get through the hard times so that we can make these different choices. And ultimately, as you know, I've been saying this many times, is it really comes to that greater love. And any type of spiritual leader, any guru, any, even the shamanic leaders of the medicine men and women, it's always love. Love is the higher vibration. It's the higher octave within the layers of energy of what has created us, even as human beings. It lives throughout our universe. It lives throughout the multiverse. And so that is an energetic that we are actually divinely designed to want in our lives, right? To resonate with. Not everybody is going to have that life, because we have innumerable, different kinds of lives. Everybody is at a different level of consciousness, and your level of consciousness is going to bring you to your different life experiences, your scenarios, your opportunities. And some people have to have a very hard life that's not filled with a whole lot of love for them to know love. So these are the things that are kind of like, oh, sometimes we have to know what love is not for us to know what love is, right? So we have to look at how each one of us is on our very own unique journey of life. And there's no right or wrong or good or bad. We're all just where we exactly need to be, being presented time and time again with opportunity to make choices to align ourselves into higher spiritual growth or higher conscious growth, because spirituality and consciousness are the same. They're the same word. They're synonymous. So those people who don't like the word spirituality, we just use consciousness, because that's what it is. We live in a conscious cosmic world, universe, you know. And so within that space, we are being invited, we're being given opportunity to move ourselves in that direction. And so then we have these dark powers that come in. And again, some of these were definitely created before humans were even created. And so these dark powers are there to test us. They're there as the trial. They're there as, to put us in the lack, because their energy is about, control, manipulation, oppression. They want to take away our personal power. They want to leave us in a place of fear, right? Because when we're in those places, we are more easily manipulated. We will do things that we would not normally do when we are really in a heightened state of fear. And what we're heading into with this 2025 and with this huge shift is that there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of fear no matter what. Because especially, I'm going to speak specifically for the United States, because there's a lot of different people. We are a mixed group of beings from all over the world. We're the melting pot, right? So we have people of all sizes, of all colors, of all ages, of all skill sets, and we're all here. And again, the United States, America has been considered people come here for the American dream, the dream that you can get out of a different type of political system and actually make a life for yourself that can bring you into that higher love, that higher peace, ease, flow, joy, right? So those are those higher divine designed resonant energetics that live in us that we are wanting to move towards. So again, going back to those darker energies, and especially I talked about those greater demons, they are there to really test us, and we're going to be tested. We are going to be tested because anybody who wants to take your freedom, free will, and choice away for you to live your own life will pay a hefty karmic price for the ones that are doing that. So anybody who comes in, anybody who's already in government. Now, again, I'm independent. I'm not one or the other. I see the whole picture. There's good things and bad things on both sides. However, what's kind of happening with the MAGA people at the moment is about wanting to take power over others. Look at the energy. Look what's happening, And so this is where we bring our attention. This is where we expand our consciousness, is that when somebody else wants to take power over somebody else, make those choices for them, like there's crazy things that were happening, on the news and the YouTube, which is kind of where I get my stuff, where, men, some of these men out there are all about your body, my choice, and are getting like egomaniacal about it, getting crazed about it, and about like, ha ha ha, you're never going to, you women are never going to be equal to us men. Just crazy stuff. And how that rhetoric, that energy, the energetic is spreading through the youth population in high schools, in colleges, all sorts of crazy stuff's happening. And that's about fear inducing. That's that dark energy coming in, manipulating people to make, to align in that energy and behave in those ways. And again, we are, always at the effect of these energies. So we were like, okay, well, that person's just, you can put a label on them, and I'm just going to use a very generic label, like that person is a bad person, right? But is that person really bad? Or is that person at the effect of something? And this is where we really want to start to expand our consciousness, because people will be at the effect of something. People will be able to, like, their minds will be tainted by dark energy, aligning them into wanting to have power, control, manipulation, instill fear, all of those things. And that's why the unconditional love, the compassion, and the forgiveness is such a powerful energetic. It's an unseen energy that does help heal. And that's why I talk about this regularly. And this is where we as humanity globally, not just North America or not just United States, are needing to move in, because 2025 is a collective energy for everybody. And we're going to feel it big time in the United States, for sure. There's no doubt about that. But we are also a leader in what is to come for other nations as well around the world, right? So looking at that, when we see that, hey, they're not just, a bad seed. Because I'm going to talk about seeds here in just a second. We're talking about how we, when we're born, and of course, there's so many factors. And if you look past at the very beginning of the episodes and about how our life experience, how, where we're born, our family, our environment, they all play a significant role in who we become, right? And so, but we all are divinely designed to resonate, or want at least to connect into that higher love I'm going to say for the most part, because there are exceptions and we can talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that at this very moment. Well, you know what? Yeah, let's go ahead. Because me getting back to it, what I find out is like, oh, I'm going to talk about that later. And then all this other stuff comes in, because there is so much. Everything's connected. There's so much about life, and everything's connected. So again, there are dark energies that will come through, that are born into our human existence, that have an agenda, right? And they're already aligned with that darker energy. Now, This is why I said that we're going to talk about this in another way. I'm not going to dive into it, but I'm going to introduce the idea. Okay. Now, okay. The introduction to this idea, which I wasn't expecting that I was going to talk about this at this very moment, is that humans, true humans, are the newest species in the cosmos. We're the newest beings, spiritual beings as humans. And I talked very briefly about how we were created not by the books of Genesis or, in the Old Testament and whatnot of, Judaism and Christianity. I don't know, again, the books of Islam, so I can't speak to Islam at all. I would love to learn that. I don't know that. But through this whole other energetic, like we have to develop consciousness before we develop these bodies, right? And so it's like through this process. And so human beings are the newest spiritual being in not only this universe. Well, actually, there's others that are being created. Like people are like, "Oh, are we the only beings in the world, in the universe?" No, we are not. Now, I've been working on this for the last several years, and so I'm going to share with you what information I'm getting. And again, this is about you taking it in, you working within your energy field. You may say, "No, that's absolute bullshit, and I don't believe you." And you absolutely don't have to believe me, because we're all going to be at different consciousness like levels as to how we receive information, right? So what I've been receiving is that if we have about 8 billion people on the planet, about 7-ish billion of those are true humans, meaning that they came in as human beings for the very first time. And 1 billion of those people are not human. I mean, they're star beings. And there's two different kinds. There's the helpful kind and there's the unhelpful kind, right? And I'm going to have a whole show about talking more about that, but I'm introducing the concept. That's why I just said it's just an intro, right? And so it's those unhelpful kinds that are born into these human bodies. However, they lack empathy. They lack the ability to know, truly feel love. They live on a scale of gray, shades of gray, from black to white, but not even white, but shades of gray. They don't know the rainbow. They don't know the love. They understand it conceptually because they come in and they're very cerebral, but they're not embodying of it. And many of them come in to actually thwart the mission. And some of them meaning like try to, oh God, this is going to lead into so many things. I just opened a can of words. Okay, so some people are here to, some of them are here to thwart the mission, which is to kind of like abscond, take over humanity and use us as energy for their missions. And I'm going to definitely get into that in a different show. But these shows and this show, with many other shows to follow, we're looking at these allies and how we can use these allies to really bring us forward with these dense energies that are all around us, and how we will prevail, how we are going to succeed, and how we are going to use this, these allies to really be able to find our own personal empowerment, to stay strong, to be in a place that really allows us to see clearly, openly, to use and exercise the opportunity of unconditional love, compassion, forgiveness, because when we recognize that that's the antidote, that's the energy that creates the change. That's the energy that is through inspiration as well. Inspiration is actually how people change. You can't tell someone, "Oh, you need to do that," because we all know that when somebody tells you what to do, what do? You most likely you won't do it. A person has to be inspired to do it. They have to choose that for themselves, because the biggest thing is that we grow, we heal when we are the healer. As an energy healer, and I tell my clients this all the time, I'm just your guide, but you are the healer. You have to choose this. This is your free will, your choice. You are being asked to do your work, to move yourself forward, to look at the hard things, look at those parts of us, that are really ugly sometimes to look at, and own it, and make a conscious choice to do something different. Now we're going to take our first break. And when we get back, we're going to dive in to what we're really here to talk about with our first ally. All right, take care. I'll see you here in 2 minutes.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Okay, welcome back. Okay, so we are looking at, so I was just talking about how there's, human beings are the new species in the cosmos, and in this universe at least, and there's other universes. This universe is infinite. All universes are infinite, but there are not infinite number of universes, and that will be in that show. We'll talk about that one. I know, lots of interesting things, right? And again, try it on. If you don't like it and you don't believe it, discard it. But I'm bringing you what is being shown to me. Okay. So looking at what's happening, what's to come. And so what I want to say is that we're going to be tested and we're going to be tried, and we're going to be feeling a little uncomfortable. However, uncomfortable is actually where we grow. We don't have to like it. We're never going to like it, but it's how we grow. And it's that squeeze, it's that pressurization, it's that, that feeling of like, how do I get through this? And that's where we start to tap into these energetics that help us understand how to get through them, right? And so, as we look at the dark forces, now there's so many things here. Astrologically, huge things are happening. So many things are happening in the sky right now. Tomorrow is a full moon in Taurus, and then, we have this whole Uranus, piece happening. And we have Pluto moving into Aquarius on Tuesday for 20 years, which is going to hugely shift humanity is never going to look the way it once did. It's going to look drastically different. So we're moving into a huge cultural shift, not just cultural shift, a human civilizational shift. Okay. So this is where we're at. And the Trump campaign is going to be, is the catalyst for that. So I just want everybody to know that, and it's going to feel really uncomfortable. Now, the big thing about that is that, again, a couple of years ago, I went to one of my high school reunions, and an old friend of mine, she said to me, Andrea, everybody's medicated. And, she got me thinking because I'm not medicated and I haven't lived a life of being medicated. So I had to really kind of like tap in and be like, yeah, I guess I guess the world, or at least the United States, I can't say the rest of the world, but in the United States, people are medicated. And we're looking at, there are so many different kind of medications, big pharma, right? So big pharma, you have your antidepressants, your anti-anxieties, you have your pain relievers, your opioids, which is a huge, creating huge addictions, reverberating not just in the United States, but all over. And, and there's so many other types of pharmaceuticals. Now, when I'm talking about those greater demons, and those greater demons attach on to institutional things that affect millions of people. Well, where do you think Big Pharma is connected to? Or is Big Pharma actually for your freedom, your free will, your choice? Now, it can paint a picture. There's a small truth that says, oh, you want to feel better, you're depressed. Well, take this pill and it's going to make you feel better, right? And on some level, I guess some people, their anxiety may certainly decrease, or possibly their depression isn't as intense, but it's never solving the true issue, because all of those issues is energy issues. And I just spoke, today's my 37th show. And I spoke for at least 30 of these shows about our energy field and how whatever we're working with is guiding us. And we need to feel. When we feel something, it's bringing us information, it's bringing us awareness. It's expanding our consciousness that says, hey, there's something that's not working, or there's something that needs to be looked at, or it's just a little red light flashing that says, hey, attention, you need to pay attention to this. And we can look at every aspect of our health, whether it's our physical health, our mental health. We can talk about our spiritual health as well. And, so all of this is, pharma, big pharma. I went to herb school in 1995. I'm going to age myself here a little bit, but I started, talking about how this has been part of my life for 30 years. And I learned, of course, very early. I was 21 years old. I was 20 when I started. And, in plants, because here's what we're getting into. Our first ally, besides the angels that I talked about, but our first ally, and these could be our seen allies, is we're going to be talking about plants. Because big pharma is giving us these pills, but really what's happening is we create dependency. And we still have a low level of connection to ourselves and the world around us. A lot of times these meds numb us. And especially if you get to the psych meds and things like that, when people have, for example, schizophrenia. Well, everything is a spiritual issue. Because we're spiritual beings having these human experiences. We're not just like, oh, I just got this fucked up body and oh, woe is me. And now I have to take these anti-psych meds so that I can be numb for the rest of my life. And that's my one life and the one life theory. And then when I die, and if I, maybe I go to heaven, maybe I go to hell, maybe I traverse the in-between worlds for the rest of my, existence, right? Like we have to recognize that story no longer serves us. Let's just say that story no longer serves us. And people can have that life. And when we look at the more than one life theory, reincarnation, we get to come back and try it in a different way. We may be up against some of these things. This is our karma. Okay, well, you did it that way. Well, let's see if you can make a different choice in this next incarnation, right? And that's why our plant allies are so, I can't even say, like, they are at the top of our dearest friends, if we can even look at it that way. So when I talk about allies, And there's so many of them, and therefore I'm definitely, for the next several episodes, I'm going to talk about many of them. So let's look at plants, starting off with our food. We're definitely disconnected with our relationship to food. And it's those plants. I mean, plants bring, I mean, they bring in our carbon dioxide so that we can breathe. You know, they bring in, they create the oxygen for us to actually live. If we didn't have any oxygen, we would die. So they create that carbon dioxide for us to have oxygen so that we can actually even have life, first and foremost. Then as we start to look at, well, what are we putting in our bodies? Because our food will either hurt us or they'll help us. And there's so many different allergies right now. There's because we've gotten so far away from actually eating real food for the most part. Many humans. I'm not just going to say Americans because this show's for everybody. So it's about getting back to that relationship with our foods. There's foods that hurt us, there's foods that help us, and there's foods that are neutral. And we got to know ourselves. And again, this whole show, since the beginning of episode 1, has been an introduction to learning about yourself, learning about who you are and what's operating in your energy field so that you can make more conscious choices, expanding your consciousness, connecting into more things, right? So first of all, yeah, we're looking at food. And then we can move ourselves into the next level of the plants as medicine. So as an herbalist, going to school way back 30 years ago, this is where we start to build relationships. This is where we start to learn that there are so many plants around us that are here for our benefit. And the big difference, the most like neon lighted difference, is that these plants are made from the absolute essential elements that we are made of. They are made of the fire, the water, the earth, the air, that are the same cosmic forces that have created us. We have different levels of consciousness. We're different creatures, but we're conscious beings working together. And they are here as our greatest ally. And so they are of the absolute same cosmic forces that we're made of. And therefore they're here to help us, not just in the foods that are going to really bring us into our ultimate energy and thriving livelihood, but also of how do we heal ourselves. And so this is where we get into the herbalists. This is where we get into this is where we get into that word, the witch, right? And so for definitely the last numerous centuries, definitely even into the different millenniums, that, the witch actually, there's all sorts of different translations. But it was also wise one who had a relationship with the plants, one who could speak to the plants and learn what they were used for. And I have to honestly say that 30 years ago, I went to herb school and I began that relationship. Now, everybody, when you're working with consciousness, different people are going to have different gifts. And my gift actually is the ability to communicate with plants. Now, am I really great at it all the time? No. I'm going to be honest with you. I could be better, because I'm busy. I can give you all my excuses, but I do communicate with the plants. I work with them regularly and they speak to me. And not just the plants speak to me, but the earth speaks to me. The earth guardians speak with me. And so I'm going to share a little bit about all of that next week, right before Thanksgiving, because of big changes. We're at this place of endings and beginnings. And I have a really big ending that I'm in the middle of. And I'm getting ready for a brand new beginning, a brand new life. And I'm going to share more about that next week. But as we get into our plant friends, this is where we start to invite them. We invite our plant friends to come forward and help us, work with us. Now, many people are like, oh, okay, well, even if I have a cold, like there's echinacea, for example, there's golden seal, there's osha, there's so many herbs, and we're not going to go into all of them. I have wonderful friends. All the herbs are my friends in different ways, right? But we learn about what is good for us. Now, even people who said, oh, well, I tried natural medicine, it just doesn't work for me. Okay. Well, one of the things that I will say is that if you have an ailment, if there's something that you're working through, then you also have to look at the duration and how long we work with that plant. But here is the most essential part. This is about where we become conscious and we build a conscious relationship with that plant. We even if you have a tincture, I'm just going to say it's November. We're getting into cold season. I know lots of people have colds. I'm kind of working through something myself. And, and you have your tincture of echinacea or you have your herbal blend. Introduce yourself to it as if this is a friend of yours, not like a human being. Be like, hi, I'm Andrea, and I would love to create a relationship with you. I would love for you to help me heal myself. I'd love for you to work your energy in my energy body that will bring me into a more healthy, whatever state of being. And this is how we begin to create these relationships, as we begin to recognize that there is a relationship there waiting to happen. If we just go to the store, and we could go to Whole Foods, we could go to whatever is your local grocery, health food store, grocer, you buy your plants, or you buy your herbs, and you just take your supplements without even acknowledging it, it'll take you longer to heal. When you have a direct conscious relationship to it and you call it by its name and you introduce yourself and you ask for what you want. This is the key to all energy relationships. Everything, every ally. You ask for what you want. You see it as a conscious energy, not just something that you're completely, unconscious of, right? When we start to actually step into our own consciousness will come into us in a whole new way. So this is where we begin those relationships. And so looking at our plant allies, looking at our food, that's why people offer the prayer before they eat their meal. It's not just a Christian thing. I believe. I mean, I know a lot of people in Christianity do that. But it's also a prayer for all people connected to the land, connected to their food, acknowledging it, thanking it, for giving it the nutrients, for bringing, all that my body needs for my health, wealth, vitality. Even if I were to go and get a fast food, which doesn't happen very often, let's just say, but once in a while you're in that situation, that's what's available. And, you look at that chicken sandwich, and thanking that chicken. And knowing that even though this is not the best thing for my body, my acknowledgement to you is going to actually, on an energetic level, shift that a little bit. So it's not going to be nearly as not good for my body, right? So this is where we're building those relationships. We're thanking it. We're acknowledging it. And again, this is where the magic happens. Magic, which my dearest beloved teacher from many years ago said, magic, the true definition of magic is where two conscious energies interact. And this is where we begin to interact with unseen conscious energies, or even we can see the plant, but we can't see the interaction maybe so well. They're not speaking directly back to us. But if we develop that relationship, we develop our ability to listen. We don't just listen with our ears either. We listen with our whole bodies. We listen with our energy fields. So again, there's clairvoyance of the seeing, clairaudience of the hearing, clairsentience of the feeling, and claircognizance of the knowing this information's coming into me in some way, and I don't necessarily know how, but I know it. So this is our wise ones. They knew this. This is how they knew how to use herbs for different things. So we're going to take another quick break. This will be our last one. I've shifted around the commercials. And then when we get back, we're going to dive a little bit further in and see how we can use these in different ways for our own health, wealth, well-being, for what's to come. Okay, I'll see you back here in 2.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. Yeah, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Okay, welcome back. One of the things I also wanted to mention is that on my Facebook post and my Instagram post, I have the goddess Durga, and she rides on a tiger. And she, most often, her arms, she usually has like, I think she usually has 11 arms. No, I'm sorry, let me refrain, 12 arms. 11 arms is an odd number and it's not that. But what I do believe is, what I know from Durga is that Durga was created by 10 of the Hindu gods. And yes, 10 of the Hindu gods. And they all tried to fight this demon. And each one of these gods was not able to fight the demon. However, each one of the god had its own very unique and specialized power. And so each one would go after and take their turn. And by all means, this is the Andrea version of the story. So please look it up, get the full rendition of it, because this is just from memory from years ago. Okay. It was a last minute thing that when I was posting. So I haven't refreshed my memory on it at all. So please, by all means, look it up. But in this place, she was created because each one of these god and goddesses were not able to have the full strength and power that they needed in order to slay the demon. And they created her, and each one of them gave her an arm. So that's why I said 11, but she has 2 arms. But the 10 arms around her, 5 on one side, 5 on the other, each come from a different deity, a different god or goddess that holds the power in which they bring to the world. And so through the multiple allies, through the multiple powers that she held, within all of her 12 hands, she was able to slay the demon. And as we are moving into looking at our energy allies, we're going to be looking at how we can have multiple 10 arms of all sorts of different energies available to us so that we can slay the demon that is before us, or that we can walk through that path unharmed. So that's really why Durga, I thought, was perfect to begin this conversation, because she is such a wonderful representation of where we're headed right now. Okay. Now, moving into the rest of what we're talking about. So I'm talking about our energy consciousness with our plants, our friends, magic. Again, the interaction of two conscious beings, right? Interacting. And I love that. So this is where we begin to build relationship. The very first show, I said, everything about life is about relationships. Everything. Everything's connected, right? So our relationship with our plants, and on so many different levels. Again, food. And then I talked about herbal medicine. And so herbal medicine, if you get a tincture, that's going to work on the physiological aspects of our body. So it's going to work. And when I say physiological, it means, let's say, high blood pressure, low blood pressure. So it's going to be working with all the way our body and our cells and our organs and whatnot are operating on a physiological level. Now we have other things as well. We have what's known as flower essences. And flower essences are by far one of my most favorite allies. And I raised my children on them when they were little. And you can give them to pets. You can give them to infants. They do come in a little bit of an alcohol, but you can mix it into water. And that alcohol is just the carrier. Of course, we need, when we make medicine, we have to carry the properties of that plant or that flower have to somehow, the energy has to go somewhere to be, and right now we are, the energy has to be, so funny that, because the word that I want to say is brewed, distilled. Has to be distilled into a carrier for us to get it into our bodies. So tinctures use usually an alcohol or glycerin carrier to pull and extract the medicine out that's going to help us. The flower essences are going to use an alcohol type of energy, a carrier that is going to pull the flower energy and essence out. That's going to help us on an emotional level. Now, this is emotional spiritual. And there's so much information out there. Just start looking things up. And here's the thing. I'm in the process of endings and beginnings, and I'm in a process of, you can probably see in my cabinets behind me, is I'm getting ready for a big move. And so I'm clearing out certain things. And so in this process, I'm definitely looking at, my allies and working with my plant, tinctures and everything that I have going on in this room that you can't see. Just kind of working with this, but also just that support. This is the emotional support. This is like, I'm going through a really big process. I'm going through this huge shift. And so what would be a good ally for me to have that is going to support me and that's going to bring me into a place of like, I got this. I'm not worried. I'm not stressed, to the best of my ability. Now, also, because I'm in this process, I have not been able to list a bunch of resources for this show in particular, but I will. So on my website, under the 37 and using our Unseen Allies, I'll be talking about plant allies, and I'll list what is known as the Flower Essence Services, FES, which has so many different flower essences that you can look you can look up, and there's even a little search bar, and you can put in, for example, fear. So let's say you're experiencing a lot of fear of what's to come, what's, that we're heading into some uncertain times right now. So then you can, and then it's going to give you a list of all sorts of different things that you can look at. And you want to find the one that's going to be most resonant to how you're experiencing fear, because there may be 15. And then it'll be like, and then you start to read each one of them, and you're like, oh, by the time you get to the sixth one or something, you're like, that's the one that I'm really experiencing. Because there's so many different ways we can experience fear, or we can experience stress, worry, there all sorts of things. So people are experiencing, these are the emotional elements. So if you're experiencing betrayal, abandonment, broken heart, the list just goes on and on. You can put it up in the search bar, and it'll populate a bunch of different flower essences that you can look at to find the right one for you. And they also have flower essence mixes. Now, I think it's Richard Bach. No, that's an author. Dr. Bach. He was the one that created the first flower essences. Let's see. Rescue Remedy is one of the most well-known. And not only is it in like a little, tincture form, but it also, you can have like little pastels that you can chew, and it comes in different forms. So it's not always just like a little tincture. However, since Dr. Bach started that, there's other great sites out there that you can find this as well. So this is for the emotional. How do we connect into what's to come in a way that we can really kind of gain our empowered self in the forward march to the greater awakening on a collective level of all of humanity, which is what we're going into. So there's just a lot of really great things to check out there. So that will be, and it's not there yet, under the resources on my website. Also, looking up, again, getting back to plants and tinctures. There are nowadays, everything you need to know about it is online. So I have so many herb books over the 30 years that are on my shelves that now you can just like look at formulas, for what might be going on, because there's a lot of things that it can really help us with. In herb school, not only just in herb school, but in many different holistic alternative health approaches, they say that the only time you ever need to go to a hospital is when you either have you broke a limb, like you broke a bone, or you need surgery. That our allies are in our food and our medicines. They're in our plants. Of course, they're in our minerals and our animals too, but they're more minute in those, in that level, right? And like, for example, like if you were to get bit by a snake, you're going to have the serum that's going to, the antidote is going to be of the venom of that snake. You take that, and then that's going to heal you from, the poison that the snake emitted. So then we look at homeopathy, which is very similar to that. That's exactly what we're looking at. Homeopathy are plants that are not in liquid form, but are in these little tiny sugar balls, these sugar pills. And usually you take about 5 of them at a time, but you got to be careful, because if you're doing anything with mint, and people like to chew mint gum or brush their teeth with mint toothpaste and things like that, mint actually counteracts them. So when you are taking them, you have to also be conscious. Everything's about being conscious, right? So being conscious of how you're taking them. And then we don't always want to take an herb every day. We don't want to we want to honor that herb. Now, also getting back to that relationship, we want to honor that herb. We want to be friends with it. We want to ask it to help us. But we also want to give it gratitude. We want to be grateful. If you had a human friend, right? You don't just demand from them all the time without giving back. There's no friendship there. So you really want to create a friendship. Create that gratitude. Thank them. If you're growing herbs in your garden or in your home, You're going to give them maybe a little, like you could even give them a little compost tea sometimes. You can even give them, the love. You sing to them or you put some music on, whatever. Pet them. You have a nice rosemary plant and you stick your hand through it and you waft it around and rosemary starts to, diffuse into the air, or lavender or whatever. This is where we create that relationship, like even if it were a pet, and we're going to talk about pets because they're another ally, right? But I want to bring it to your awareness. How do we actually engage with them? How do we recognize them as an energy entity, even though we may not be able to communicate in the same way with them, right? So, okay, then there's homeopathy. Look it up. There's all sorts of homeopathic doctors out there. There's naturopathic doctors that are medical doctors practicing with herbs and natural medicines, which is how I raise my children as well. And then we have what we can also look at is our essential oils. In our essential oils, we can put in spritzers, we can put in diffusers, we can put in massage oils, we can put in many different ways to use them. And they also have the property to do all sorts of different things for our bodies. So it's very important for us to also recognize that they come in many forms, right? And so when we have so many different types of forms in which we can use them, then we can bring that ally with us. I mean, every day we're using them, whether we're aware of them or not, even just with the food you eat, right? So that, again, that's bringing that consciousness forward. Again, now we have even herb teas, simplest form, not a tincture, but you can make it. And it's also, herb tea. Sometimes I might even throw it in the bathtub and make an herb tea that I soak in, like a stress relief or something like that. You can even, especially herb teas are really big. Like, of course, I did childbirth and as a doula and worked with families and mothers who were, pregnant, postpartum care, and creating those sitz baths. We're creating the healing ointments. We're creating the way in which we can heal our body. Herbs can also heal sore muscles. They can also help, comfrey in particular is an herb that helps, with broken skin. And I don't want to get too detailed with the birthing process, but there's all sorts of different things that are incredibly nutritive for our bodies to absorb, from our flesh level through our skin as well, right? And and we can even, again, we can make nutritive plants like nettles and oat and whatnot. Alfalfa. These are very nourishing, very nutritive plants that we can even water other plants with because they're very good composting plants. Their nutrients bring back nitrogen and whatnot into the soil so they can have that relationship with each other as well. Okay? So anyway, we're going to also talk about plant medicine, meaning like the types of plant medicines that we would actually take that are more of the psychotropic variety. And so I may actually bring that into next week because we're on the plants. Yeah, I probably will. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to talk about plant medicine when we're going to talk about ayahuasca. We're going to talk about peyote. We're going to talk about the psychedelic mushrooms, which also I know is Niño Santos, but has many, many names because it's in so many different cultures all over the world. There's all sorts of different other ones too that I'm going to bring forward, and we'll talk about them as our allies as well. However, we have to be very careful with those. We have to be very careful with a lot of different plants. There's also plants out there like hemlock that will kill us, right? We know that through Shakespeare, but I also know that as an herbalist. There's all sorts of different types of things that will either harm and hurt us, but most things, for the most part, are here to help us. And so this is our first really big seen ally that's not of a human form. And so I invite you to connect. find the plants that you're already connected to. What are your favorite foods? What, speaks to you? What makes your body say yes, yes, yes? And even if you go into the grocery store, and just ask your body, we talked about that body talk. Ask your body, do I want broccoli today? Do I want spinach? Do I want, put some vegetables out there and see what are the nutrients that your body is going to make an energetic resounding yes to, because our bodies will tell us what nutrients we're kind of missing. Okay, we're at the end of our time together, and I just want to say thank you all for being with me. And of course, if you like this, please, you can always give it a thumbs up. You can pass it forward and let other people know. You can connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at connected.dragonfly. You can reach out to me at my website at andreadragonfly.com, all the things. So for the week, I wish you all a beautiful week of connecting to your plant allies, those you know and those that you are inviting in. So with that, be well. I'll see you next time.
This has been Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Join Andrea each week on an extraordinary journey, exploring the consciousness of energy and how you are connected. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.